So, I've been listening to podcasts and lectures and conversations with Yuval Noah Harari. I've read all three of his books, and I've been fascinated with him and his concepts for a little bit now. But recently, it came to my attention how much content and interviews and lectures and podcasts he's been a part of. Now, the overreaching question that he seems to pose or ask that I haven't found anybody really give a good response to, at least not the one that I like the most. How's that? The question is, how do we, in a society, or rather in a world that is fundamentally grounded in the idea of free will, of you as a free and independent thinking entity who dictates and guides their own life, how do we continue to trust that in a world that is more and more being systematically manipulated by machine learning and artificial intelligence? Now, he poses a lot of really good arguments, and so far the best full conversation on this topic that I have listened to is the podcast that he did with Mark Zuckerberg, and they talk a lot about a couple of ways to attack this. Especially Zuckerberg kind of sees it as a dualistic approach to attacking this problem. First, he says it's a policy problem and a design problem. So you can attack it from the policy side of it, which is having government entities enact specific policies in order to kind of protect other nation states from becoming involved and manipulating and using, and specifically he of course is going to be geared towards the kind of what happened during the Russian manipulation of the the elections in 2016. Now, the inherent problem with asking Mark Zuckerberg to dissect this problem is that he is on the defense right now because of what has happened. He's been looking at this from this happened, how to prevent this from happening again. See, Harari is able to look past that because he doesn't have to defend Facebook. He can look at this as a broad, overreaching systematic problem of machine learning and artificial intelligence. So because he has a less specific framework, he doesn't have to think about it that specifically. So that's kind of where Zuckerberg's flaws come in, I think, because Harari's response to this is, I believe, from what I've gathered, is, and I don't mean to speak for anybody, is you can't control other nation states, and the only way to kind of work with that problem is a global effort and agreements in how we're going to move forward with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, with these very complex learning algorithms. Now, that doesn't really solve a whole lot of the problem, even if you got everybody to sign on to a UN agreement, and Harari brings this up as well, that doesn't necessarily foolproof or take care of the situation or problem. The second issue is the actual technology side of it. So the argument is, I believe Zuckerberg kind of presents the idea that as developers, you kind of inherently can, and he has a very positive and almost utopian outlook on in this ideology that like you can inherently build in democratic ideologies, and it'll kind of keep the process open and away from totalitarian systems and modes of thinking, and that democracy has eventually always won out as being the most efficient and effective system for governing of peoples. Harari's response to this is should be a fairly simple one, and that is just because that's how it's happened in the past doesn't mean that's how it's going to happen again, as well as the fact that there have been periods of time, long periods of time in the past, where we have had totalitarian regimes that have existed for long periods and spectrums of time, because that was the most effective and efficient way. Just because since the rise of democracy, and of course in the most recent of history, it decentralized information has been the best way to govern and to use as a platform for systems of social constructs or control. With the advent and invention of the internet and machine learning and artificial intelligence and advanced learning algorithms, you have, he says, and I kind of am apt to agree, you're going to have a turn where a totalitarian system and a centralized point of governance and information collection may actually be more efficient very, very quickly, to the point where they could beat out decentralized systems rather quickly. Because as he points out, but also as he kind of alludes to, and as is kind of alluded to in a book called Hacking Darwin that I just finished, when you look at totalitarian regimes such as China, the reason that China is able to go on this technological boom and also is hacking the human genome and able to start making all these advancements really quickly is they don't have a democratic process. They don't have any systems of slow down or wait or whatever it is. If it is seen as the best interest of the country in the perception of the supreme ruler, all he has to do is say go, and as it was brought up in either in one of the podcasts or in that book, I've been taking in a lot of information lately, so it's kind of, they're overlapping, but the point is if the Chinese government says everybody in China needs to go down and submit DNA now or be prosecuted by the law, then all of a sudden China has the biggest grouping of sequenced genomes in the world, and now has the ability, the more information they have mixed with machine learning and artificial intelligence to write code in order to sequence and organize all of this information, that gives them more power. So information is going to be the new currency. And in a place that doesn't have to regard individual freedoms as, it doesn't have to regard them, it's going to amass more information more quickly than a country in which has to go through a democratic process to decide the best way to tenderly handle everybody's information. So the advancement in totalitarian systems could easily run away with the prize as far as where it's going in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So I get the arguments, the dualistic arguments, or the two frameworks in order that you can kind of attack this problem. In addition, I believe one very, very important framework is being ignored, and that is social information. And I think Harari's overlooking it because, and maybe he mentions it somewhere else, but I haven't heard it yet. Harari's missing it because he's doing it. Zuckerberg's missing it because he's too focused on the other 2 points in which he has had problems with in the past. And that is information, spreading that information to people, getting people thinking about the fact that artificial intelligence and machine learning is out to learn who you are and wants to sell you things. It wants to manipulate the way that you think. It wants and Harari kind of makes this argument already, and that's why I think it's strange that he doesn't just come out and just vocalize it and say it. Because if you know, if we can put it into people's minds that maybe free will isn't everything, maybe you can be swayed substantially easier than you believe you can. Maybe you need to do more self-evaluation and believe less of this bedrock fundamental idea that I am every choice that I make and that I have some kind of complete autonomy in everything that I do. Maybe recognizing ourselves as a biological algorithm that takes in inputs from everywhere around us, digests these inputs, and then puts out outputs. We do have some choice in there. I'm not saying that free will is completely non-existent. What I'm saying is if we completely disregard this idea that we're constantly being bombarded for our attention, and we can spread an awareness campaign that keeps people on their toes in order to analyze all the ways in which they're being persuaded, everything from Hollywood movies to the things that they're eating to the advertisements they're seeing, everything. And to remind people that it's okay. You're being sold something all the time. Everybody's trying to sell you something, whether it's a TV or a perspective or a politician. Everyone's trying to sell you something. I'm trying to sell you this idea right now. And just like Harari says, that like stories and and he doesn't call them illusions, he calls them stories or metaphors or fictions. Just because they're fictions doesn't mean they're not good. They have brought people together, and they have, it can be, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can say that everyone's trying to sell you something, but that's okay, because that means they're going to learn everything that they need to know about you, and they're going to learn what you need, what you want, what you crave, as good as you. And so if you utilize that to your advantage, you can progress human society in a very positive manner. However, if you are unaware that it's happening, or, God forbid, locked in this idea that you are somehow immune from persuasion, then you are being messed with. You are the easiest one to fool, as Harari states out perfectly well. The people that believe in free will the most are going to be the easiest to manipulate. They're going to be the easiest to convince. So, what we need is an information campaign about these ideas and proposing them in a way that hopefully will not terrify everybody, and hopefully that will be something that you can grasp and say, it's okay that I'm being manipulated. That doesn't mean that I have absolutely no free will and I might as well just give up or whatever. But maybe the bedrock foundation of free will is becoming inherently dangerous in this new world that we live in. We just need to be careful. The other thing that we can do is look at people who have written amazing literature like Robert Anton Wilson and read Prometheus Rising, and look at and read Behave by Polanski, and look at the ways in which we are capable of being manipulated, and how our mind works, and how and the more that we understand that, the more then that we'll be able to tinker with our biological algorithms and adjust our intakes and outtakes, and be careful, be cautious of who we're letting into our bubble, and why and how much. without losing out on a huge amount of trust. See, the problem is that if extreme examples start happening or continue to happen, like Russian hacking and stuff like that, then people are going to become inherently scared. And if they don't have the information available to learn how these things work and learn how their consciousness works, then what they're going to do is be put in a position where they deny and they become upset, and they also are going to think that they have absolutely no control over what's going on and how to fix it or participate in it, because it's scary and it's a lot, but it's not too much, and the benefits still can outweigh the problems or the the inherent technical possibilities and issues. We can't just give up technology. It's not going to happen. Even if the United States puts a ban on specific things, it's not like it's going to change the worldview or make somehow China or Russia stop developing these things. Technology is going to progress farther. It hasn't stopped since the dawn of human history. We've built on it, and we're going to continue to build on it and push ourselves forward. If we want to participate in the governance of that and in the molding of that, we have to understand how it works, and we have to understand that, like Harari says, manipulation comes before understanding. So people, before they are even understanding consciousness all the way, before they're understanding how human beings make decisions, they're already manipulating that. And if we can understand that they're already manipulating that, then we can protect ourselves long enough to continue to build on our understanding and hopefully grow a future where we can utilize these technologies in a very positive way and bring prosperity. Because these technologies have the capability to bring prosperity to places that don't have it. And as Zuckerberg argues, they already are bringing prosperity to places that don't have it. But I think that Zuckerberg overlooks a massive amount of disparity that could come very, very, very quickly for people if these technologies develop, and if a very small group of people has possession over them. So there's a lot of things to dissect, but I think the biggest thing is to become informed about how you make decisions, become informed about what kind of intake you're having, what kind of inputs are affecting your rationale, and don't be so quick to think that you are making or constructing all the ideas in your head, because I don't think you are. I am pretty sure that I'm not. I've done a lot of thinking on free will in the last little bit, and I'm a nobody. I don't pretend to know a whole lot of information, but what I do know is I think a lot, and I hope all my ideas that are in my head aren't my own, because some of them are horrible, some of them are terrible, and some of them are brilliant. At least I think they're brilliant. They're probably not that brilliant, but I think they're pretty cool. And I don't want to be all of them. Maybe I am all of them. But maybe that's because we're all infinite beings that are tapped into a universal consciousness, and we are all everything. But we need to look at how we mold our own consciousness, and we need to realize that part of what molds that consciousness is input. It's not that hard to understand. When we're babies, we understand that we indoctrinate the youth. We program children through our systems, through education, through our parenting. We program them to hopefully be the people that we want them to be and that society deems as good or whatever. So realistically, we understand that this happens at that level and at that period in time in a child's life. But then somehow we grow up, and when we turn 18 years old, all of a sudden we're no longer affected by societal control or perception manipulation. That's all crap. Anyway, that's my 20-minute rant. Go look up Harari and his 3 books, Sapiens, Homodeus, and 21 Suggestions for the 21st Century. Read Behave. Read Algorithms to Live By. Read Hacking Darwin. And listen to the podcast with Harari and Zuckerberg. And there's also another great one on Armchair Experts with Experts, with Harari on it. That's really good. And then, stay vigilant and learn as much as you can, because the world is changing rapidly. Evolve or get left behind.